Alright, everyone, a very good morning to all of you. So we will be continuing our discussion on the creation of the Indian Constitution itself. And in the previous installment, we had seen what were some of the challenges that our founding leaders had sort of encountered, before they sat down to draft the Constitution. And of course, what were some of the sources of inspiration? Like, what was the journey really that eventually led to the creation of the Constitution by the Constituent Assembly? Something that we shall be discussing right now. Right. What were some of the inspirations? How did the British colonial experience help us? What was the role of the Government of India Act 1935? So on and so forth. Yes, so we discussed all of that. And now we will, of course, be discussing the role of the actual Constituent Assembly itself. Right. Again, this is not something that is absolutely brand new to you. You have done this in grade 8. So this is just going to be more or less a repetition of sorts. And we'll just breeze through it very, very quickly without further ado. Right. So the Constituent Assembly is actually a body of representatives. Right. It is a body of leaders which was responsible for drafting this document called the Constitution. Right, it's a body of elected representatives, right, and it was called the Constituent Assembly. I'm just going to refer to it as CA from now on, yeah. But please don't write CA in the exam. Please make sure you're writing Constituent Assembly, right? Otherwise, I'm just going to circle it and write Chartered Accountant over there, right? So please make sure you're using the correct terminologies properly. Right, so for the first time, the election, so it's a body of elected representatives, and obviously since it's a body of elected leaders, elections were held to the Constituent Assembly in July 1946, and it was elected in July 1946, and they met for the first time in December 1946. However, of course, after the partition of India, the Constituent Assembly also got partitioned into the Constituent Assembly of India and the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan. We are not bothered about Pakistan right now. We do not really care much. We are going to be discussing what the Constituent Assembly of India did, who were the people involved, and how did they come about with this beautiful document that forms the soul of our nation itself. Right. So the Constituent Assembly of India, which drafted the Indian Constitution, had close to 300 members. It had 299 members. And after almost 3 years of discussions, right, roughly, it is 2 years, 11 months something, okay. So after roughly 3 years of discussions, the Constituent Assembly adopted, now this is very important, right, मतलब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बन के तैयार हो गया था, ठीक है, मेरी बात समझ आ रही है, वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बन के तैयार हो गया था बाय 26 नवंबर 1949. Am I being clear? But it came into full force, like it was implemented. Adoption और implementation में बहुत difference है, ठीक है. It was implemented completely in full force on the 26th of January 1950, जिस दिन छुट्टी पड़ती है. You celebrate it as Republic Day, right? We watch the parade in the morning and so on, right? So big difference between adoption of the Constitution and the implementation of the Constitution. 26th January is implementation. 26th November 1949 is adoption. Right, am I being clear? Of course. So what I would also like you to do is, there are some leaders of the Constituent Assembly that are mentioned in your textbook. Please make sure you're reading them thoroughly, because they will definitely be asked. It's about the leaders, about who they are, about what they did. Right, it's a very general reading. It's like a personality sketch. So please make sure you're reading all of that. Yes. Okay, moving on. So now the question is that the Constituent Assembly drafted the Constitution roughly 60 years back. So why in 2022? Why after almost 60 years, 6 decades, 7 decades, roughly? Why should we accept this Constitution that was written by a bunch of people? Now there are multiple reasons for it, and this is very important, right? You need to understand, why are we adopting this? Why are we using it? Okay. So the first and the main reason is that the constitution does not reflect the values or the views of its members alone. मेरी बात समझ आ रही है? Am I being clear? ठीक है. It is not something that Ambedkar wanted or Jawaharlal Nehru wanted or Rajendra Prasad wanted or Krishnamachari wanted. Okay. It is a document that has been created keeping in mind the hopes and aspirations of the people. Okay, that the people would like to be treated with equality, that the people would like to have equal opportunities, that the people would have the right would like to practice the religion that they feel comfortable in or that they would like to practice. Okay, so on and so forth. So it is a broad consensus of the hopes and aspirations of the people. Clear? Am I making sense? Okay. And Indian example is a shining example, because if you notice many parts of the world, including Zimbabwe that we had studied, the constitution was rewritten so many times. You look at Pakistan, don't even have to go to Zimbabwe. Pakistan's constitution was rewritten so many times because these basic rules were not acceptable to the majority of the social groups or political parties. तो जब एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं लगा उन्होंने बदल दिया, उन्होंने उसको दोबारा लिख दिया, फिर दोबारा लिखा, फिर दोबारा लिखा, तो इट लूजेस इट्स पर्पस, राइट? If you keep doing the same thing again and again and again and again and again, you start to lose purpose. But our nation is a wonderful nation that way, and credit goes to us. That even though there are several political parties, there are several groups that have questioned some provisions of the constitution, yes, for sure. ये ठीक नहीं है, वो ठीक नहीं है, फलाना ठीक नहीं है, ढिमकाना ठीक नहीं है. लेकिन nobody ever has questioned the legitimacy of the constitution itself. Nobody has said that hey, it's a fraud document, that hey, we can survive without the constitution, that hey, this constitution itself is useless, let us change it. Nobody. And for the past 75 years of our independence, even though the constitution has been amended, but it has not been entirely rewritten. Am I being clear? Rewriting नहीं हुई है constitution की. So that is a plus point, positive point, right? And that is why we must accept this, because you realize that if it has not been rewritten, majority of the people of this nation are accepting it. And that is why it is reflecting the hopes and the aspirations of the people. And thus it must continue to remain in force. Very simple. ठीक है. And of course the second reason is that the Constituent Assembly itself, मेरी बात समझ आ रही है? The members of the Constituent Assembly itself were a very diverse lot of people. They had come from every nook and corner of this country. So in essence, they were a microcosm. ठीक है, they were a microcosm. They were a tiny little reflection of the entire nation of India. मेरी बात समझ आ रही है? ठीक है. So you will realize so many people from different parts of the country, belonging to different religions. Say for example, we had Bhim Rao Ambedkar from Maharashtra, we had Pandit Nehru, we had Sardar Patel from Gujarat, we had Abul Kalam Azad, we had Rajendra Prasad from Bihar, we had C. Rajagopalachari from Tamil Nadu, we had Sarat Chandra Bose who was from Bengal. ठीक है, we had Shri Krishna Sinha from Bihar once again, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee from Bengal once again, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur from Punjab, right? Gopinath Bordoloy was also a part of the Constituent Assembly, who was from Assam. ठीक है. Then you had Gopala Swami Iyengar, Krishnamachari, right? So many. Frank Anthony was there, who was the Anglo-Indian representative. John Mathai was there, who was another Christian. So you see what I'm giving you examples. I'm giving you examples to prove my point. That it represented the people of India. You could see I named so many people from different areas. I named so many people belonging to Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, Sikhs, Christians. Right? तो इतने सारे लोगों का पर्सपेक्टिव लेकर ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बना है, इतने सारे इंटेलिजेंट लोगों का. All of them are very well learned, Oxford educated, Cambridge educated, Harvard educated. Right? So, it gives legitimacy, right? No random person has created this document. Highly wise and highly intelligent people have created this document. मेरी बात समझ आ रही है? ठीक है? So, of course, you need to understand that at that point of time there was no universal adult franchisee. So the members were not directly elected by the people of the country. Yeah, that is the only difference. They were elected from the existing provincial legislative assemblies. Provincial Legislative Assembly of Madras, Bombay, United Province, Central Province, Bengal, so on and so forth. Northwestern Frontier Province. ठीक है, क्योंकि उस टाइम पे स्टेट्स नहीं थे, उस टाइम पे प्रोविंसेस होते थे. मेरी बात समझ आ रही है? ठीक है, उस टाइम पे क्या होते थे? उस टाइम पे प्रोविंसेस होते थे. प्रोविंसेस वर लाइक स्टेट्स ओनली. ठीक है, सो प्लीज डोंट गेट कंफ्यूज्ड. सो you need to understand this. So they were elected from there, right? And this ensured that members from all geographical areas of India are elected. Yes, indeed, absolutely. And you need to, now you realize that even though majority of them were from the Congress party, of course they were, right? Because Congress was the leading party at that point of time. But there were members who did not align with the Congress itself. मेरी बात समझ आ रही है? There were certainly members who did not align with the Congress party. So that added to the richness of the debate. That added to the quality of the discussion. कि जो अग्री कर रहे हैं वो भी हैं और जो नहीं अग्री कर रहे हैं वो भी हैं. तो obviously a much healthier discussion will come forward. Right? And this assembly comprised of leaders belonging to different groups, castes, class, occupations and religions, of course. Even though most of them were lawyers, but yes, there were some businessmen also. There were ladies also. Right? Like Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, for instance. So yeah. So you understand, it is a diverse group of people that has created it based on a lot of discussion and deliberation, and thus we must accept it. Because you realize, yes, it is coming from intelligent people, so it must make some sense. Right? And of course, the third major reason is that the Constituent Assembly worked in a very democratic manner. मेरी बात समझ आ रही है? It worked in a very systematic manner. It worked in a very consensual manner. With a lot of consent, with a lot of discussion, with a lot of debate. There were some basic principles that everybody followed. Right? And of course, the all pervasive, the all intelligent Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, of course, the great leader that he was the chairman of the drafting committee of the constitution. He prepared a draft constitution for discussion for everyone, for amendment, for discussion, etc. And then for almost the next 3 years, the Constituent Assembly met for 114 days. That means it debated 114 times. That's a lot. There were over 2,000 amendments that were considered. And every document that was presented, every argument that was uttered, every single word that was spoken in the Constituent Assembly is recorded even today. ठीक है? Is recorded, and you will realize that these recordings are available even today for people to read. There are 12 volumes of these debates. These are called, for those who are interested, of course थोड़ा बहुत advanced है, अभी पढ़ने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. These are called the Constituent Assembly debates. It's actually a very fascinating read. There are 12 volumes of it. ठीक है, Constituent Assembly debates. मेरी बात समझ आ रही है? So once they were printed, these discussions even today help us to understand the logic, help us to understand the rationale behind any particular law in the constitution. It helps us to interpret कि अगर बी आर अम्बेडकर ने कुछ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में इंट्रोड्यूस किया है तो क्यों इंट्रोड्यूस किया है, उसके पीछे क्या लॉजिक है, उसके पीछे क्या रैशनल है, क्या पर्पस है उस रूल का. तो इट अवॉइड्स एम्बिग्विटी. It avoids ambiguity. Can you see? So you see there are some wonderful reasons for us to accept the constitution because of the following reasons. That it was a very democratic document. That there was a lot of discussion and deliberation before which it was launched. That it represented, that it represented the aspirations of the people and not of the members themselves. That it comprised of people from different groups, castes, occupations, religions, Congress party, non-Congress party, different geographical areas. And thus it makes sense for us to adopt this document. Am I making sense? So I'm going to stop right here. And we're going to complete the last segment of this chapter in the next and the last tutorial, which will deal with the values and the philosophy of the constitution itself. So please stay tuned, and wishing you a very